Hey everybody, today I want to show you how to tie in with a figure 8 knot and how to do it the right way. And I'm going to start by showing you a knot that I don't like very much. So there's a couple reasons I don't like this knot. Number one, the knot's actually a long ways away from my harness, so if I'm going into clip, I'm going to be grabbing across this big old knot. Number two, it's not properly dressed. You can see that the strands, as they're going through here, this strand in particular, is crossing over the other strands. And that actually increases pressure on the knot and weakens the rope just a little bit. Okay, so to tie a figure 8, get about a 3-foot long tail. Have the tail go behind, around, and up through the hole. And so you end up with about a 2.5-foot long tail and the characteristic figure 8 knot. I have kind of a slick way that I start the knot as well. So take the tail and put it on the left-hand side of your left hand, reach up through the figure 8, twist around, grab that rope, and then pull through. So you want about a 2.5-foot tail, and then go through both loops of your harness. And when you cinch that rope up tight, cinch the knot up tight to your harness, so it actually pulls those two loops together a little bit. This is just going to keep the knot out of the way while you're climbing. And then when you do the follow through carefully so that you don't cross any of the strands. They run in parallel, and you can see that. So checking that, it's got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and it's a properly dressed knot with none of the strands crossing over the other strands. And I've got about an 8-inch, 10-inch long tail, which is perfectly acceptable. Now, what to do with this extra tail there? You could just leave it hanging there. I kind of like to do something with it to get it out of the way a little bit more. You can, a lot of people just put an overhand knot and they'll stuff it through like that, and that's fine. It keeps it out of the way. It does add a little more bulk to the knot, especially as you're going to clip. Maybe you run across that. Another great way to do it is Yosemite finish. So for the Yosemite finish, make a little bit of space in that bottom loop, and you can actually take this knot and stuff it straight through like this. And then a lot of people tie their Yosemite finish just like that, and I have for years, and it holds just fine. But I'm actually going to do some testing that shows if you ring load this particular version, it actually is weaker. So instead, another way to do the Yosemite finish is to go around the strand, and I went around from the left to the right, and that also is a good knot that will hold. The only downside of this method is it breaks the flow of the knot just a little bit. So the preferred way is to bring this strand around the front and then stuff it back through. The extra tail follows the same flow as the rest of the knot. So this maintains the easily visible characteristic of the figure 8 knot, which is one of the reasons we really like it. I just showed 4 different methods of finishing a figure 8 knot, and I've heard the figure 8 knot can be a little bit weaker depending on how you finish it. So I wanted to test that for myself, and I'm going to do that here in a minute. I'm going to test both an axial load, so right down the axis of the knot in the same way you would load it if you take a fall, and then also a ring load, which is trying to pull the knot apart here at the tie-in point. Now the only way I think that climbers can possibly ring load a knot is if you belay through that tie-in, through the rope at your tie-in point, instead of just belaying through your belay loop. I don't belay that way, but I've heard there are some people that do. So I tested it. Now I'm not an official lab by any stretch, but if you're interested to see the results I have, which I found interesting, stay tuned. So I tested 4 cases. In the first case, I just left the tail loose. In the second case, I looped the tail back through the knot without going around the load strand. In the case 3 and case 4, I did loop around that load strand, but in case 3, it was not properly dressed. In case 4, it was properly dressed. I tested both axial and ring loading. The first case was the axial load. None of the knots failed under an axial load in any way. When I ring loaded the knots, case 1 and case 2 both failed at about 800 pounds. The knots rolled over and then just fell apart. Cases 3 and 4 did not fail to the limit of my test gear, although they did roll over and expand. All right, here's what I learned. Number 1, I wasn't trying to do an exhaustive test here and test all different scenarios. That would take a lot more time than I have. Number 2, it's not clear to me that a ring loading of the figure 8 knot's a real issue. Most of the time you're tied in straight and you're axially loading that knot. So not sure this is a real problem or not. But it's definitely a figure eight's not something you'd want to use to bind two ropes together, and unless it's a follow-through 8. Number 2, as far as the different finishes go, definitely the knot capsized without any feedback through, without the Yosemite finish. It capsized pretty quickly. The Yosemite finish did help that process. The Yosemite finish that worked better was the one that went around the strands. If you're going to do a Yosemite finish, wrap it all the way around that strand. And for cleanliness of the knot, I would wrap it around the correct direction so that the knot is properly dressed when you're finished. All right, thanks for watching. I hope this was interesting, and stay safe out there.